A very good evening, Zimbabwe. You are listening to Studio 7 from the Voice of America on Monday, April 20, 2015. And this is Live Talk. I'm Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Gibbs Dube.
And tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about the continuing xenophobic attacks in South Africa.
To join the discussion, phone us directly at this number, 001-202-619-2077, and we'll call you back.
Live Talk goes out to Zimbabwe on our 909 medium wave frequency and on the 4930, 5940 and 15455 kilohertz shortwave, Monday through Friday at 8:30 p.m.
On the internet, you can find us at www.voazimbabwe.com, www.voashona.com, and www.voindebele.com.
Now, to express our sense of shock and disgust, our sense of shock, disgust, and as we abhor the incident that happened in Durban, the act of treating other Africans in that horrible way can never be condoned by anyone. On our own behalf, and on behalf of SADC, as indeed on behalf of the African Union, that must never happen again. Never happen again in South Africa or in any other country. Our own African people on the African continent must be treated with dignity. Now,
of course, that was President Robert Mugabe addressing Zimbabweans at the National Sports Stadium on Saturday, talking about the xenophobic violence in South Africa.
And Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini, who is accused by some of feigning xenophobic attacks in South Africa, today called an imbizo in Durban. He called the attacks on foreigners as, quote, vile and wrong. Zwelithini said reports that he called for foreigners to leave South Africa were quoted out of context.
Police in South Africa say about 6 people have been killed in Johannesburg and Durban so far. The violence is continuing despite calls last week by President Jacob Zuma and all leaders of the country's opposition party to South Africans to end the violence.
What are your views on this issue? If you wish to join the show right now, phone us directly at this number, 001-202-619-2077, and we'll call you back. That number again, 001-202-619-2077. You can also use WhatsApp and send us a message on this number, 1-202-465-0318. asiqhubeka mfowethu
honguka hama dzadiwa nhasi toda kuti tinge tichitarisa nezvenyaya yekurwiswa kwevanhu vekunze muSouth Africa iri kuramba ichienderera mberi, kunyange hazvo vatungamiri venyika iyi vari kuti aiwa mhirizhonga iyi inofanira kuti inge ichipera. Vanhu vanosvika vatanhatu vanonzi vafa kusvika pari zvino mhirizhonga iyoyi iri kuitika. Vanhu vemuSouth Africa vari kuti vekunze ndo vamwe vacho vari kuti vari kuyazotora mabasa avo, nekudaro vanofanira kuti vabude munyika iyi, asi vamwewo vari kushora zviri kuitwa izvi. Gibbs
yehambe Zulu kandaba lingalithola njani lapha khona ngapho-ke ngemakhaya thina ngapha siyaphila sibili okwamagama. Simzwile sibili namhlanje ke uNkosi uZwelithini ekhuluma khona ngale-ke eDurban Blessing, lapha khulume khona sithi hayi khona ukuthiwa wakukhuluma ukwenza ukuthi kube lokugijinyiswa kwabantu abokuza eSouth Africa azange kutsho yena. So-ke uthi yena wakukhuluma iSouth Africa singumlotha, utsho ukuthi singama-ashes void. So unjalo-ke uthe lamhla lapha akhulume khona ongani yimpi yangikhona icelayo ukuthi abantu bethoba inhliziyo, ukuthi abantu bekhumisana umlotha, njalo bonke abantu abavela emazweni bangakhahlamezwa. So ke uthe ekhuluma khonokho ke sizwile ke ngomgqibelo lapho ke umongameli uRobert Mugabe akade ekhuluma khona sithi lokho kwenzakala eSouth Africa kungani kuyasoleka kakhulu ngakho kumele kuphele siphinde njalo sizwile umongosi wethu Buthelezi ekhuluma ngakho futhi esithi hayi Zulu kandaba khona ngapha eGoli yehlisana inhliziyo so kulesicelo esikhulu kakhulu ukuthi abantu bengakhahlamezwa so uthi njengoba elekhophe elikhulu ngona abantu bafumbathe bafake khona mpana igwaphela.
Of course, to show that the violence is not ending, just about an hour ago, the Economic Freedom Fighters Party, EFF, that's an opposition party in South Africa, is claiming that one of its members was actually shot when they were in a township called Alexandra, where they were embarking on a door-to-door campaign, a door-to-door anti-xenophobic campaign. I managed to talk to the EFF President Julius Malema just a few minutes ago, and I asked him about what transpired in Johannesburg earlier this evening.
Well, our members were protesting in the township of Alexandra, just some few kilometers outside Johannesburg in South Africa, calling to an end to xenophobic attacks on foreign nationals. The attack was aiming at intimidating the membership and the leadership of the EFF from discouraging South Africans from engaging in illegal activities of xenophobia. And when the shooting happened, unfortunately, one of our members was shot on the leg, but that did not deter us because our members became more determined, and we moved from door to door, house to house, speaking to our people and conscientizing them about how xenophobic attacks will discredit the standing of South Africa in the international community. And we are happy that the message was well received, except that one incident.
And what are people saying in South Africa? What were they telling you when you were moving from door to door?
The people in South Africa are saying they've waited for service delivery from 1994 for almost 21 years and nothing is happening. And because there is no proper explanation as to why are they continuing to be in a very miserable situation even after obtaining of political freedom. They are now becoming gullible and even believing stories that no, a government is unable to deliver to them because foreign nationals are taking free houses and the jobs that ordinarily were supposed to be received by South Africans. So we really tried to explain that there is a problem of job creation in South Africa, which is not caused by foreign nationals, that even if they were to leave, they will remain in the situation they are today. They will remain jobless, they will remain landless, they will remain homeless because the government of the day doesn't care about the people of South Africa. The leadership is self-serving.
What then is the way forward? We saw last week the entire leadership of South Africa trying to come together to end this violence, but it appears it's still continuing.
We hope that we will be able to calm the situation very soon. We have decided to now get ourselves involved and speak directly to our people and not through press conferences and through elite activities.
That there, of course, is the president of South Africa's opposition party, Economic Freedom Fighters. That is Honorable Julius Malema, talking about the anti-xenophobic campaign that his party has now embarked on. Gibbs.
Yes, mzule kakhulu khonapho ke umnumzana Julius Malema ekhuluma ngokwenzakala kunangale ke eSouth Africa. Uthi khona bebehamba bebona abantu emalokitshini. Bathi behamba khona ngale kwasekudutyulwa omunye wabo edutyulwa nje bazama ukutshela abantu ukuthi hayi inhlupho ze-South Africa akusukuthi zenziwa ngabantu bokuza kodwa zenziwa ngokuthi uhulumende kabaphathanga kuhle, so uthi bangaze bekhahlamezwa abantu kuyahlala kunjalo khona ukuhlupheka. So ungani uhlulukelwe futhi la umnumzana uMalema. Right now I think we've got our two guests lined up right now. We've got Mr. Ngabuto Mapena, who is the chairman of the organization called Zimbabweans living in South Africa. Mr. Mabena, good evening and welcome to the program.
Evening. Thanks a lot, my brother.
Thank you so much. We also have Ms. Diana Zimbutsana of the Zimbabwe Exercise Forum. Ms. Zimbutsana, good evening and welcome to the program.
Evening, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let me start with you, Ms. Zimbudzana. What is the situation like now in South Africa?
Well, we were hopeful that the situation might be calm by now after all the sorrow that went throughout last week, but it hasn't really calmed down. We have received reports of a Zimbabwean woman who was hurt to death as well over the weekend, and we have also received the reports of the booing of the Inkatha Freedom Party leader that was held by King David. And it clearly shows that the mentality of the people has not really changed that much. And people are still walking around with their hearts in their hands, thinking that they might be attacked at any time. So the situation hasn't calmed down at all.
Mm. And Mr. Mabena, we heard the king actually making an appeal. Is this going to work?
Well, we don't know if that is going to work for the reasons that we are told that during the Imbizo today in Durban in the stadium, non-Zulu officials that were officiating at that gathering when they were doing prayers were put for the fact that they are not Zulu. That's the report that we received from the media. If it is correct, then it is very unfortunate because when the king goes to the Imbizo, trying to calm down the situation, which in our view he started by those utterances he made some few days ago, and you then have people booing other non-Zulus who happen to be South Africans. What then happens to non-Zulus or non-South Africans? So we're not very sure whether that will address or end the current violence going on. But what we should also note is that this violence, in our view, takes the form which we saw during the black-on-black violence in late 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. And it seems to us that those structures have been reactivated because this violence is concentrated mostly in the hostels. We know that during the dark days of apartheid, the people that were staying in the hostels were seen to be aligned to the IFP. We are not saying it is the IFP, but this is what we have seen because the attack in Alexandra, the people that attacked in Alexandra came from the hostels. The people that attacked in East Rand, in Johannesburg, just outside, around the Denver, they came from the hostels. So the question is, why are they coming from the hostels? Yes, of course, a few days ago you had attacks from spaza shops in Soweto, which was not linked to the hostel dwellers. But it seems now the people that are in the forefront are people that stay in the hostels. And we're asking ourselves, did the democratic government since 1994 address the challenges that were faced by the people in the hostels? And to what extent have they dismantled those rational forces in our view?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. For those of you who are just joining us, good evening. And this is Studio 7 Live Talk. And tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about xenophobic attacks in South Africa, where officials are saying about 6 foreigners have been killed to date. And thousands have fled their homes and are living in makeshift camps. And of course, there have been attempts by South African officials to end this violence, but it appears it's still continuing. The situation remains fluid and tense. And of course, reports from the Herald are saying that Zimbabwe has repatriated some of its citizens. The report is saying 400 Zimbabweans who were displaced during the xenophobia-motivated attacks in the Chatsworth area of Durban in South Africa left for Zimbabwe last night by road via Beitbridge border post in a convoy of 6 luxury buses and a haulage truck. And of course, countries like Malawi are also doing the same, Mozambique as well, Gibbs.
Yeah, we've got some messages from people as well. There's so many messages, Blessing. I'll just read one or two. Given rights, I think xenophobia must stop very soon because what is done by the people of South Africa is not good at all. The nation of South Africa is supposed to be, charged by influencing its people to kill others, like, dogs. So this guy is not happy at all. And then Tatenda writes, this is a very big mistake by South Africans. They should not have done this because we helped them to liberate their own country. So you still remember the war against the colonial regime. I think that's what Tatenda is talking about here. Yeah.
And we have several messages also on WhatsApp. Nkala says that's barbaric what is happening in South Africa, the killing of fellow Africans. Petronella says xenophobia is a menace and is real. The situation remains tense in areas of high concentration of foreigners, whether residential or business. Even in workplaces, we know locals say nasty things behind our backs and pull long faces at us. Kennedy says South Africans may not be blamed for the violence since it is economically rooted. However, the inhumane treatment offered to fellow Africans is a disappointment. It will compromise South Africa's continental relations. T. Mazura says, we as Zimbabweans must stop buying goods in South Africa and act against this xenophobia and not to allow any goods of South Africa to enter Zimbabwe. Landelani says, xenophobia is bad and must end immediately. It was never supposed to have occurred. However, the root cause of it needs to be corrected or addressed. And then, of course, many comments. We'll read more comments as we go, Gibbs.
Now, we've got, you still remember today we ran a story from this opposition party leader, that is the Africa Democratic Party, Marceline Chikasha. She actually accused Zimbabwe for this kind of, issues. So let's talk to Mrs. Zimbudzana. There is this opposition leader who said that Zimbabwe is equally to blame for what is happening in South Africa. How true can that be?
How did he say Zimbabwe is equally to blame? If he meant that the country has been failed to be run so properly that Zimbabweans decided to seek sanctuary elsewhere, yes, I agree, because we would all be in Zimbabwe right now, and some of these things would not be failing us. So yes, if that is the sentiment that he meant, I agree with him. But we also have to realize that when your house is burning, you have every right and reason to rush to your neighbor's house and ask for assistance. One, to douse the fire. Two, to help rebuild another house so that you can go back. Almost every Zimbabwean that I meet here in South Africa, none of them say they want to live here forever. They all say as soon as our house has been rebuilt, after the burning has stopped, we will go back. Zimbabweans want to return to Zimbabwe. That is our main goal. We want Zimbabwe that is prosperous, that can accommodate us all, or that is politically free, that we can go back and rebuild. That is the goal. And for some of us to come here wasn't a matter of choice. It was a politically motivated thing. So as long as the politics of Zimbabwe is not changed, Zimbabweans will go and seek sanctuary elsewhere. So maybe even by the time people started coming here, remember xenophobic attacks, the other major one happened in 2008. Zimbabweans left Zimbabwe in 2008. They knew that the South Africa where they are going to is also burning. But they probably looked at that fire and realized, well, it's not an inferno. The one that I'm running from is an inferno and somebody is pouring petrol on top of it. I better run to that natural fire because maybe we saw somebody trying to douse it in South Africa. So, yes, Zimbabweans would really one day want to return back to Zimbabwe and rebuild. But South Africa has got to appreciate that is also to blame for Zimbabwe's problems. Because even during the presidency of Thabo Mbeki, he probed the Zimbabwean government. And now President Jacob Zuma came in, we thought he was going to be more militant with Zimbabwe. But he changed his hat because he also started having problems in his own backyard. So how does he expect those people who left their house burning to return or to stay silently when their house is still burning and the neighbor is not helping out? He's also looking on and saying, everything is all right. I don't think that's a fire. That's the problem with Zimbabwe right now.
Thank you so much. Mr. Mabena, South Africans are saying, foreigners are taking our jobs, and of course unemployment is around 24% in South Africa. Could this be the problem, the fight for the little resources that are there, especially in high-density areas?
The statistics that have been released indicate that 4% of foreigners are employed in South Africa across the board. And then domestic workers, we have 16% of foreigners who work as domestic workers. So given those figures, I'm not really sure that one would argue and say foreigners are taking people's jobs, because if 4% of the workforce is foreigners and 96% of people that are working as South Africans, there's no argument there. And in any fact, even if that were to be the case, say if that percentage were to go up, what is the contribution of the Zimbabwe nationals in particular and the other nationals in South Africa in the economy? We are paying taxes every day. We are paying toll gates. You drive from Johannesburg to Musina, you will see how that freeway has been developed over the years and the number of toll gates that are there. You will know that during the Zimbabwean crisis, particularly in 2007, 2008, Musina town mushroomed. They're building a beautiful mall there, thanks to the Zimbabwean shoppers that cross the border on daily basis to come and spend their monies in South Africa. So there's no way, in our view, that you can then say Zimbabweans or foreign nationals are taking people's jobs in South Africa. It is not true.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mabena and Ms. Mbunzana. Please do stay on the line. And of course, we'll continue to discuss the causes of that violence, the xenophobic violence in South Africa. Some are attributing it to crime. Of course, some South Africans are saying these foreigners are the ones who are committing a number of crimes in the country and stuff like that. Several issues really. Rega timboende kune muteereri tina Demi parunare makadi Dennis mukoma Dennis
makadini zvenyu
aiwa tiri bo muri kupi mukoma Dennis
aiwa ndizvozvo marwadzo enyaya dziri kuitika South Africa
ringagadziriswa sei dambudziko iri uye riri kukonzerwa nei?
Ndine urombo zvikuru kuti hama dzedu dzinenge dziri kukanganwa rubatsiro rwatakadzipa kuti vazove zvavaveri nhasi vakukanganwa chazuro nehope. Zvakadaro ndinobvumirana na Madam Chikasha Maslin kuti this government of ours is equally to share the blame because those people vakaita victims of those xenophobic attacks in South Africa. Dai situation yedu munomu, economic situation ne political situation, dai zvanga zviri zvitsvene, those people won't be going there to do those odd jobs or odd chores in South Africa. Remember, years back, those people while we are kunoku vachibva Africa in Botswana vachizotsvanga greener pastures during the apartheid era. You see, but zvinhu zvakazopidiguka anyway nenyaya yekusafambisa zvakanaka economy yedu munomu nenyaya yekusaobserva ma-human rights yedu munomu munyika yedu yeZimbabwe. Right, iye hurumende yeSouth Africa ndinoona ine ruoko mukati mezvizvi because ndakanyatsotarisa uyu ma-armed forces ekusouth Africa ndichafananidza nemunomu hazvaikwanisika kuti zvingaitika semuno muZimbabwe munomu kuti hurumende ingatadza kuhandla violence, ingatadza kuhandla mariots. kusvika asipedza kune dzimwe nzvimbo, just like a vote fire saizvozvo izvezvi. That person dai muri muno muZimbabwe was going to be held accountable, that king Zwelithini. Munhu anofanira kuongororwa nyange zvake nhasi akusandura matauriro. Tarisai muone kuti iko zvino pave neprocess yerepatriation. Dai hurumende yanga isina chekuita nemhirizhonga izvi, paiva this expatriation process here, kana kuti vanhu ivavo vaitochengetedzwa vodzokera kumabasa avo.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru Ngoma Dennis.
Ndinotendawo zvikuru.
Thank you so much.
Nguva yakanaka ikoko.
Aiwa, Nemiu, of course, what Dennis is saying is that the government of Zimbabwe is partly to blame because, if the economy was firing on all cylinders, there was no reason for Zimbabweans to risk their lives crossing the crocodile-infested Limpopo River, going to South Africa to look for greener pastures.
So you're saying exactly what Maishikasha was talking about, right?
Yes.
So sibuye kancane ke singayi kumama uZimbuzana siphinde lawo khonapho ke Mabhena kambe okhulunywa ngabantu khona kungathini ngakho ukuthi kungani uhulumende la iphela kungani lapha ke kuyahlupha eZimbabwe.
Uhulumende wangakithi siyakwazi vele ukuthi kuluhlupho ngoba sizakhumbula kuhle ukuthi ngesikhathi ukahulumende wenkazatho kusukela ku-2009 kusiya ku-2013 i-economy yethu ibisingani iba ngcono, sibonile ukudla kungena, imisebenzi ingani iba khona, kodwa kuthe kusiba lokhetho lolo kwaqhilwa khona amabandla aphikisana amabandla ama-parties ahamba aya contesta kungabi le implementation of ama-electoral reforms. iZANU-PF yabuyela futhi embusweni. Nxa ukhangela usukela ku-31 July 2013 usiza namuhla uzabona ama-companies amaningi ayavala kakhulu, abasebenzi balahlekelwa imisebenzi, abantu abatsha baqede izikolo behle ukuthi bathole imisebenzi bonke bese bebuye eSouth Africa ngoba umuntu nxa eqeda ukubhala O-level mbuse college ukudinga umsebenzi ucabanga ukuthi adinge umsebenzi eSouth Africa. So ngakuthiwa inotho yethu iphezulu, ngabe malutshwana kakhulu amaZimbabweans abuye lapha eSouth Africa ikakhulu abantu abatsha. So kuqakathekile lakho futhi ukuthi i-African National Congress ingaqhubeki isupporta iZANU-PF ngesizathu sokuthi izolo balwe bonke impi bangama-liberation movement. Siyakhumbula ukuthi unobhala jikelelo ANC wahamba emhlanganweni weZANU-PF ku-conference ngo-2011 wathi bazancedisa iZANU-PF inqobe ekhethweni. Yebo yanqoba iZANU-PF, kambe bayayincedisa iZANU-PF ngezim-asset. Siyakwazi izim-asset kufana nalesitimela esingelamaviri akulanto ezoyenza. So zathola-ke izalwane zeZimbabwe zisiza eSouth Africa kumbe siya kwamanye amazwe zidinga impilo.
Siyakuzwa kakhulu-ke mnumzana ungayikatshana. So he's saying that if the economy in Zimbabwe was well and good, people won't be going to South Africa to look for jobs. And to make matters worse, he says, at one stage the ANC pledged that it was going to help South Africa, ZANU-PF, to win the elections. So he says, why are they not helping the same party to implement Zimaset?
Ringaiti kana kuti sezvo nguva yedu yamboti fambei titi Mr. Mabhena, stay on the line, and also Ms. Zimbudzana. Of course, unfortunately for our radio listeners, it ends here. But the good news is we are streaming live. So go to www.voazimbabwe.com and press on live talk. Do you have anyone, James?
Yeah, mnumzana umlilo ungayikatshana baba mlilo siyabuya kuwe.
Of course, this is Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Kip Stube saying stay tuned.
For those of you who are just joining us, good evening, and this is Studio 7 Live Talk. And tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about xenophobic violence in South Africa. Of course, the South African police officials are saying 6 people have been killed so far, and these include Zimbabwean, according to reports, some Mozambicans, an Ethiopian, and another one from Ghana. Of course, this has actually caused tension in most African countries. Why is it that there is so much resentment from most African countries? Of course, many Africans are claiming that they helped the African National Congress during its fight against apartheid. They are pointing to incidents like Nigeria. Nigeria actually nationalized BP, accusing it of supplying the apartheid regime with oil. This was no mean achievement. And of course, Nigeria also led the 1978 boycott of South Africa. This is in sports. And of course, you go to Zimbabwe. ZAPU fought alongside South Africa's military wing, that is Umkhonto weSizwe. And the same, if you go to Mozambique, of course, Mozambicans are also saying, well, President Samora Machel, who was actually leading the fight against apartheid, was shot down allegedly by apartheid South Africa. And he was killed in when his plane was shot down. He was indeed fighting for the independence of South Africa. And of course, the South Africans are saying these are works of a few elements, but generally, South Africans do want to do business with Africans. Gibbs.
And of course, our guests are Ms. Diana Zimbuzana, who is with the Zimbabwe Exas Forum, and Mr. Ngabuto Mabena, the chairman of the Zimbabweans living in South Africa. That's an organization, right? And I've got some 2 guests here. One of the guests is Mr. Mlilo. Mnumzana Mlilo, ungawutshona njani?
Ngiyatshona baba ngabuzayo.
Ukuphi lapho baba khona?
NgiseHabron.
Kunjani Habron?
Hayi ku-right Habron.
Kuthule zwizwi akunyakazeli khona.
Hayi kuthule nje uzithulele cwala.
Nginathi udaba ngathini namhlanje?
Ya uyabona yona into xenophobic ibuhlungu. Zisubuhlungu kakhulu sibili. But uyabona mina umuntu omangalisayo uMgabe kungani uMgabe ezathi khona ekhuluma ngezonophobic yena ebulala abantu bakhe. Uyabona sukela ku-ground khona manje ugijimisa belungu. Uyabo khona manje ujamara kekho lamhlanje ngiyose ngatshela abantu ethi xenophobic ibuhlungu kanjani nengayemisa ukubulala abantu. Uyabona so mina ngikholwa ukuthi abantwana senza lokho esikubona kusenziwa ngabazali. Mhlawumbe uMgabe ngenza abantu beSouth Africa benze kanjalo ngoba abantu bayahlukunyezwa.
Kodwa ubona ngazana kuzaphetha ngani khona kumnumzana?
Hayi khona kuzima baba Gibbs ukuthi kuphethe. Kuzima ngoba uyazi khona kuzima sukuthi kuphele ngoba uyazi isikhathi into lezizwe ubuhlungu ukuthi lathi masifika ngale mazweni mani sisuka sibe izigangi kakhulu. Sihlukumeza abantu ngezinye indlela ezingathandekiyo mani. Like yabona mawuhamba ufika kobo Hillbrow kobo Windsor uyazi ama-Nigeria into abazenza zisa ubuhlungu la ucaphuke. Yeah.
Benzani?
Uyazi kube siyafika ngale siziphathi even labantu bekhaya masifika ngale siba izigangi izigebengu and futhi ubugebengu bakhona sibenza singabi lamahloni sisegcekeni nje. Yabo kugcine kucunula abantu labo. Uyabona kumele ngithi imphephele emzini wakho bese ngifika ngiface gebengu sengifika sengidlengu labantu abakho lawo ngeke ungebukele.
Kunjalo baba.
Uyabona?
So ke ungathi ke lomlayezelo bani ongawutshela abantu beSouth Africa?
Abantu beSouth Africa aba-policies inhliziyo singabantu banye. Yeah.
Hayi kukahle kakhulu sibongele Mlilo baba.
Hayi lami ngiyabonga idithi.
Yeah, so according to Mr. Mlilo, xenophobia is a very painful thing, and but he's not happy that the president said something. He says Mr. Mugabe is not in a position to actually tell anyone anything about violence, So he claims that he has done a lot, in his own country. So he should not be telling other leaders what to do. So he cited the 5 brigade atrocities.
Brigade.
Yeah, then whether you call it 5 or 5th, I think something, right? Then Itai Zamara, he says it's still not found. It's all over, the show right now. We don't even know where he is. And then he says at times the Zimbabweans are to blame for these things. He says one, they turn into criminals, when they get to South Africa. So for him, he says, this is not good. And he says even Nigerians do the same thing. So then he gave an example. He said, what happens if you give some refuge to a person in your own house, and then that person turns around and starts terrorizing you, says you at times you can retaliate, because he says that's painful. You can contain it, right?
Ms. Mbudzana, let's talk about crime, but of course, people must not take matters into their own hands. That is the role of the police. Ms. Mbudzana, these claims that foreigners are to blame for the spike in crime in South Africa?
Yes, we have had that observation made even by ministers. I think even Mr. Michael Digi and Mr. Mandela have been confronted by this same issue from some minister in the South African government. And we've always categorically said, we have the Ministry of Police, we have the South African Police Service. It is their duty.
Bless you. Maybe we'll come back to you. Maybe Mr. Mabena, you can come in.
Well, in any society, you will know that you have bad elements, and we don't then in the fact that some of us we then get involved in criminal activities, and like my sister is correctly pointing out, those that are caught on the other side of the law should be dealt with according in terms of the law. But you can't then make a general statement and say foreigners are involved in criminal activities, because it will mean we'll have to visit each and every prison in South Africa and do a head count to say how many South Africans are in jail, how many foreigners are in jail. We accept, yes, that there are some among us that are criminals, fine, they should be arrested. South Africans themselves also are criminals. Some of them commit criminal activities. They also should be arrested. But we can't use that as a blanket statement to say foreigners are involved in crime. That can't be correct.
Ms. Mbudzana?
I swallowed a bit of saliva. I agree with Madonna. If the police service in South Africa do their jobs diligently, then there is no need to go around accusing everybody willy-nilly of committing crime. We are saying, we are not saying we condone crime. We are saying if a person commits crime, whether a foreign or South African or whoever, that person should be arrested and prosecuted. That's the tenets of the law. So why then should we all be subjected to the same tenets and say, no, all foreigners are criminals? I am not a criminal. Mabuto Day is not a criminal. You guys are also in the diaspora, not criminals. So why this blanket thing? We need issues to be tackled properly. If there are criminal elements, yes, there are the foreign criminal elements among us, they need to be arrested. Cases need to be investigated properly and arrest made. And then that way we'll then all go out and say, oh yes, we've all done our jobs. We also go to our Zimbabwean communities and say, please do not engage in criminal activity. But we don't know, we are not from the same mothers or fathers, we are not from the same families. Some people have different values. But for us to be all covered by the same blanket and then be attacked on the basis that we are being criminals, no, that's not good. That's not proper, and that's not the right way of conducting business.
Thank you so much, Gibbs.
Ngilo mnumzana ke umashangani lapha blessing osecingweni ba mashangani kunjani?
Yaphila.
Uphila mthandi?
Mamelodi.
Kunjani Mamelodi kolapha?
Right, mara bayakhuluma la estradini la ukuthi vele sifuze sihambe.
Lokho besitsho njalo.
But ayingakaqhamuki yona mara bayakhuluma.
So bathini nxa bekhuluma becamta khona?
ngathi sithatha umsebenzi yonke akuningi izinto kazikhuluma
kodwa nxa qhubeka baba
siyathathela abafazi asizi nabafazi ya
kodwa kuliqiniso kanganani khonokho
akuye kuqiniso iyasiqiniso ya
pho manje lizakwenzani njoba nxa abantu bekhuluma lawo bezwa kodwa bengani bakukhekheleza uyabe usungani ujala uvalo phela lizakwenzani mashangana
liyashaya luvala akuna into sizoyenza angithi sibuya khona lekhaya imvula inethanga isoyenzani le but izinophobia mina ngibona ukuthi izosiza sometimes izosiza because isikhathi semavoti abantu bazoba bakhona bazovota maybe kuzoba nenguquko because abantu babalekile boka ngithi akunamuntu lezimbabwe ya kusho ukuthi mabathi abasibulali basiqosha kahle bathi hambani kungcono ukuthi sizokhona ukuthi sivote sibhalise nokuvota sithole ama-ID sikhona ukuvota then for ibe izophunguzeka ihlupho
ubona ngazani kungenzakala khona bangalivumela
bangazivumela bazenzani ya
so nxa sukhangeleke mashangana ubona ngazani okuningi kwangikhona khona kuyaphela yini ngombono wakho
angeke kuphele
utsho ngani
abantu be-South Africa bazwisisa angeke kuphele because uyabona ukuthi even amapholisa ababamba labantu abayi nekhodi uzozwa icala lakhona liphelile awuleyazi ukuthi liphelela kulo ya zophuma free because bafana
akukhani lokuthi kuya ngaphi
ya
hayi sibongile mashangana sethemba ukuthi kawusozulima le khonapho
okay thank you
so Mr. Mashangana is saying that he's in Mamelodi and where he is, you know, he has been hearing some people talking about attacking foreigners. So he says they are saying that you know, they are stealing their jobs and some of them, even women, you know. So he says some of it is true, you know, that some foreigners have turned into crime, you know, and some are even stealing people's wives. So he says that's a problem. But he says this thing won't go away because South Africans, you know, at times are arrested, but nothing happens to them. He says they don't even go to court. Their cases are just quashed and that's it. So he says that's a problem. Yeah.
Of course, there was this story that was done by the Sunday Times over the weekend showing a Mozambican national being killed in this xenophobic violence. But of course, the South African police are saying now they've arrested 3 people because it was actually captured by a journalist who was covering the violence. So they are saying they've arrested 3. And 1 person is still on the run, that is in Joburg.
We'll talk about to Emmanuel's story, right?
Yes. We'll talk about the police action so far. Tinemwe mtereri, I think Mkoma Graham Makadi. Hello? Makadi? Chimbofamba yekubva pamuri foni yenyaya isingazonzwikai.
Okay.
Makutinzwa here?
Yeah, ndiri kukunzwa.
Taurai tinzwe, muri kupi mimi ku South Africa? Regai tikufondere back phone yenyu iri kutinetsei. Imbofamba yekubva pamuri.
Okay, ndofamba. Okay.
Okay, Gibbs.
Yes, sibuye kuye baba Mabhena usakhona ecingweni. Uyangizwa Mabhena?
Ngiyakuzwa ngikhona.
Oye uzwile lapha ke uBlessing akhuluma ngobaba lo okuthiwa ngumnumzana Emmanuel Sithole. Impikitsha ngona nxa uyikhangele iyesabeka kakhulu. Siyakwazi ukuthi abanye abantu bayachiswa, abanye kuthiwa bayagwazwa, abanye zokuthiwa baqamunywe lamakhanda into ezinjalo. Kodwa ke izitori eziphuma khona zingazana okunye kayisikho. Pho-ke abantu bathathe kuphi ukuthi liqiniso lalokho kungaseqiniso bakwehlukanisa njani?
Well lapho kusuka kube nzimanyana ngoba ikhona sibili eminye imfanekiso egijima kuma social media uthunyela umpikitsha abantu bethwele ikhanda lomuntu asikholwa ukuthi lokho leqiniso kodwa kukhona okunye okuleqiniso njengalokho kwenzakala eAlexandra kuEmmanuel Sithole eMozambique siyakhumbula kuke kwaba lo mpikitsha oyivideo eke yaphuma yasathuletha ku social media kuchiswa abafana abancane ukuthi ababuyele kibo babachisa bathela ngepetrol kodwa sezwa futhi amapholisa esithi leyo nto yenzakala eNorth West province so entweni enje iqiniso lisuka ngani libe selicatsha ungasakwazi ukuthi lokho eminye impikitsha ethunyelwa iliqiniso kumbe impikitsha asoqiniso kodwa uliqiniso khona esingeke sikubalekele ukuthi abantu bayachaya abantu bayabulawa njengoba lisitsho ukuthi sokufike more than 7 abantu asebebulawiwe lokho kuliqiniso esingeke silibalekele.
Yeah, so according to Mr. Mapena, he says it's very difficult to sift the truth from lies, in this case, because there's a lot of social media kind of, stories coming around, and you really can't believe some of the things, Yeah.
Mkoma Graham, morning wadzoka manje. Mkoma Graham. Taura itinzwe zvakamira sei kwamuri? Muri kupi?
Ndiri ku Nelspruit kunzvimbo inonzi Comat Port pabhodha rinoenda kuMozambique.
Ndokume watanzwa kuti kunenge kunetsana pakati pezvizvarwa zveMozambique nezveSouth Africa.
Kwanga tombovharwa matraki kuti asapinde nemota dzekuSouth Africa kuti dzipinde muMozambique pagate.
Saka vazovhura here manje.
Saka akubviri kuti vaende munomo vabude vaende kuMozambique. Hazvibviri because vanhu vakatsamwa.
Vari kuti kudii manje?
Vari kuti iwo munodei kunyika kwedu muchiti zinge kwenyu. Nhasi kwakazara matraki ari kubva kuJoburg ari kutoenda kuMozambique nevanhu.
Saka ko mapurisa ari kuti kudii? Vari kupindira here? Zviri kufamba sei?
Mapurisa vakambozama kumisa vanhu asi vanhu vekuMozambique vakavatadza kuti vamise. Vakatoti muganhu ndiwo iyo bhodha imi kugara kwenyuko havadi kuona kana mota yeku South Africa kana kombi kana chii inodarika kana matraki aya anotakura magudzi aya achinenge achipinda kuMozambique.
Saka mota dzangozara pabhodha?
Saka mota dzakapaka.
Asi pangagadziriswa sei apa Mkoma Graham?
Nyaya iripo chaiyo ndeyekuti iri dambudziko hombe rekutoti zvatova zvekutomukirana kwemarudzi chaiko chaiko. Nekuti mukatarisa ivava vari kudzoka kuJoburg vari kudzokera kunana Mozambique. Vari kubva vaine hasha dzakakura nekuti matrikirwa vakaitwa ikoko kwavabva kuti vazogashira kuona umwe chimwe chizvarwa chenyika yakambomushungurudza. Handioni sekudaro, ndotoona sekuti zvinoita wese sezvo ukaenda kuMozambique ndosimboendawo hangu kuMozambique. Ukaenda kuMozambique vanhu vacho kana varonga chinhu chavo vanochiita. Hazvina basa kuti mapurisa aripo kana hapo vanochiita. Saka zvinhu zvakaoma chaizvo but kunoku zvako hapana vanhu vakambobvira varohwa. Nemhaka yekuti kunoku kune vanhu vanotaura chinonzi chiswati nemachangando akawanda vanobva kuMozambique. Saka hazvisi nyore kuti vanhu vemunomu vatange because vanhu vakawandisa munomu ndekuMozambique. Vamwe vanotori nedzimba munomu asi havana kana pasipoti kana pemiti kana ID vanongogara asi vanotori nedzimba. Saka zvinhu zvinotonetsa kuti pakaita nyakanyaka chaiyo kuti vagone kumisidzana nevanhu vari munomu nekuti vazhinji vacho ndekuMozambique.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru Mkoma Graham.
Yeah, tinotenda
zvikuru. Of course, Graham is saying this might have far-reaching implications. He's saying that a vicious cycle of violence is likely to be created because Mozambicans and Zimbabweans who are being kicked out of South Africa will go back home, and because they are bitter, they will start attacking South African citizens. So he's saying this is a cause for concern. You have a caller.
Lo mnumzana ke uNdlovu lapha ecingweni. Baba Ndlovu, ungawutshona njani?
Ngiyaphila kunjani?
Amphilile Ndlovu, ungaphi khona lapho Ndlovini?
Mina ngise South Africa.
Kuyiphi indawo baba?
Ngiselangilade.
Uthiwa ngaphi?
Elangilade.
Elangilade kunjani khonapho?
Hayi lana kuthulile la.
Kodwa uzwani khonapho abahemhem?
Udlame ngiluzwe Alexander iko lapho ngathi kuyaliwa khona.
Uthwani khona ngale?
Ngathi khona umuntu abamgwazileyo ngeSaturday. Namhlanje ngathi khona futhi omunye abamdubulileyo bekumashala ababe EFF emashela yona le anti-xenophobia. Kodwa kudubule kumuntu oyedwa namhlanje kuseni.
Yebo lapho khona wena kodwa awuzwa kuthiwa enxeba ngalihlasela khona.
Zikhona inkulumo ezifikayo abantu ngoba abantu ehlala abaningi abalana special abaningi abase KZN so banokukhuluma amanye amagama nawuzwa ukuthi kahle kahle engathi asiphephile ngeke ngithi siphephile ngoba ngeke ngikwazi ukungavuka kwenzeka kusasa.
Bonke vele abantu limema dlodlongwane akulanto lengayenza khona.
Kunzima kwalana nathi nje sesilinde khona ukuzwa ngakho ukuthi mangabe sebefikile ngoba kunzima.
Sizwile phela inkosi ke uzwe lethina khuluma abantu abakulalela yini khona?
Kuyafana yonke into le ayikhuluma into ayikhuluma ekuqaleni so abantu balana obviously lento ayikhulumayo kuzoba nzima ukuthi abantu beyilalele le beyikhuluma namhlanje ngoba ayikho nje into ayikhulumileyo nepoint. Ngoba mayethi yena uzophengima engaphaka impi ilizwe lingaba ngumlotha. Ngezinye indlela lento isho ukuthini ebantwini mangabe lalela.
Hayi siyakuzwa ke mnumzana khona lapho kodwa ubona njani kuyaphetha ngani ke?
Asazi ekugcineni ngoba manje ngathi namaphoyisa akhona yonke indawo kodwa ukuphepha khona siphepha ngoba nakhona bayasazi phela mawuhlala endaweni angithi abantu bakwazi ukuthi ubuya kuphi. So kungenzeka bakunyonyobele uthola ukuthi bakunyonyobele ebusuku ngoba into abayifunayo bona into esinazo thina akuthi abafuni thina abafuna into esinazo basithathele lezi zinto esinazo into nje abayifunayo.
Kunjalo akula kunenge? Hayi siyakuzwa kakhulu ke Ndlovini khona ngapho hayi la ulimuke phela.
Yebo hayi siqaphile isimo.
Yes sibongela kakhulu Ndlovu.
Ngiyabonga.
Yeah, so Mr. Ndlovu is in a place called Langlade that is in South Africa. I've never heard of this place. Do you know it?
No.
You know Soweto, right? Okay.
And Langley Park in US.
Yeah. So what he's saying is that people are now living in fear. They don't know what can happen any minute because they are hearing people just, talking ill things about foreigners. So they get scared when that happens. And then they say, Kospin, Uzulu, usecingweni lapha South Africa. Baba Zulu, unjani?
Ngiyaphila baba Kithi kunjani baba?
Ngiphile kakhulu. Ukuphi khonapha?
Ngise Johannesburg eThokoza baba.
Kunjani eThokoza khonapha?
Ayithokoza kusathule baba Dube kodwa ke ubunzima bukhona. Sihleli nje sinovalo nje ngoba the situation is very bad.
So singathi even lesikopho segusha vela sadleke phela.
Kunzima baba Kithi sinovalo nje sivale la isihleli khona. Anytime yonke into ingenzeka cause ngathi kunespeed. La ngihlala khona ngizwa bathi ehostel nje ukhona omunye umZimbabwe nje bamdubulile nje bambulala.
Nini khona?
Kusathara we kuseduze vele.
Kukwenzakala nini khonokho?
Kwenzakala entambama namhlanje entambama ngabo 6 bamdubulile nje wafa owakithi eZimbabwe.
Uyamazi lo muntu?
Angimazi just nje but ubuye eZimbabwe indaweni zakoMasvingo khona likhuluma isishona.
Hey kodwa kubuhlungu phela okwenzakala lokho mnumzana.
Kubuhlungu kakhulu Dube mina into ekade ngifuna ukuthi ngitshela abantu nje ukuthi ngiblema igovernment yethu. Igovernment yethu ngiblema kakhulu because angeke siriske impilo yethu sisuka lesi sidaphala neLimpopo River kuya ngapha sizohlukunyezwa. They don't take even action. Why? They have to apologize to the white people to say, guys, we are sorry. Kukamele kuyenza ipolice ebizokuthi isiland restitution whereby they have to give back white people iland because bayehlulekile ukulima. Kunini kule ndlela ekhaya amankampani ayavalwa abantu bayalamba ngapha sizozama impilo zethu siyafa siyabulawa why bengahlali phansi bayoxolisa kulabo bantu aba-British that kube nomsebenzi ekhaya siyeke abantu lelizwe lapho because sibuhlungu kakhulu siphila kabuhlungu siyahlukunyezwa uhamba uyaboshwa ngapha udize emapholiseni kumele imali enye uthumeze ekhaya sizophila kanjani yethu ilizwe sinalo ilizwe lethu so ubunzima bukhona kakhulu Mr Dube angazi ukuthi igovernment yethu icabangani why ingasizweli ukuthi nathi sizohlala kahle elizweni lethu siphile kahle ngoba ubunzima sinabo ubunzima ngikhuluma kanje inhliziyo yami ebuhlungu because siyahlupheka la esikhona thina siyabulawa abanye bethu bayafa siloko nje sithukwa uyazi sithukwa amanye amagama abuhlungu and enye into ngisola the former president yala uMbeki because 2008 we vote samvotela out umgari waphuma ukuthi amtshela ukuthi ndoda step down akafuni because right now uloke busy ukhuluma into esingaqedakaliyo lo muntu sizamkhipha kudala lo muntu angazi bafuna sivote kanjani labo bantu because lo muntu waphuma kudala lo muntu because ubunzima bukhona Dula ngifuna ukukhuluma amanga shem and enye into kwamele nawo ama-opposition party awekha azama ukubambana ngoba suffer because of only one person babambane nje kube ne-grand coalition sisuse lo muntu lona mangabe kuthi bazosala behluphana nje at least lo muntu usehambile uyayibona le nto
hayi siyayizwa kakhulu hayi siyakuzwa sibili hayi uzondile sibili siyakuzwa baba
ya ngizonde kakhulu baba ngicela lokhu ungifona ngoba ngihlala ngizama ifoni yeni iyala so namhlanje ngijabulile ngoba ngingenile kulo hlelo
hayi sibongile kakhulu eZulu baba
ngiyabonga eDube baba
yes sibongile kakhulu so that was Mr Cospin Zulu who is in Thokoza in South Africa. So he says, he's a very angry man, very, very angry. So he says one Zimbabwean is believed to have been shot tonight, this evening, in near Thokoza. So he says this guy may be from Masvingo. And he's saying the Harare government should actually apologize to whites, for taking over their land. Because people who took over the land can't even till that land. And companies are closing every day. So he says the solution is to get rid of the government right now. People should go back home, get rid of the government, have the opposition to form some kind of coalition, to remove the sitting government. So I think he's not happy at all.
Of course, as long as it's done legally through voting.
That's it.
What is bad is to resort to violence. Regaiti dzokere kunemi mzvare Zimbudzana. Muri kushanda sei nevamiriri veZimbabwe kuSouth Africa? Tiri kunzwa kuti vamwe vatanga kudzoserwa kumusha. Masangano ari kumirira zvizvarwa zveZimbabwe muri kutaura here nemuzinda weZimbabwe muSouth Africa?
Hongu tinotaura navo tinenge tichitika kana vana vachinge vadai vanomhanyira kuna baba saka ivo vamiriri vemuzinda weZimbabwe ndo madzibaba anenge ari pano. Patakataura neumwe wacho akatoti tori munzira izvozvi kuenda kuchurch kwakagadzirwa tende yekuti vanhu vawane pekupotera vakamirira kuona kuti mhirizhonga yacho ichasvika kupi. Saka takazonzwa kunzi kwaane mabhazi tichinzwa kunzi pane mamwe akatosimuka nezuro mauro akananga kuZimbabwe. Tinoshanda navo tichinzwa kuti zviri kufamba sei. Saka izvozvo tiri kuita.
Asi kune mamwe mabhazi ari kuuya zvakare kuSouth Africa? Mamwe ari kuuya?
Pari zvino hatina kumbobvira tanyatsoongorora kuti tione kuti vanhu vari kuuya vachipinda muSouth Africa vari kupinda sei. Tanga tichingotarira kuna ava vari kubatwa nemhirizhonga kuti vangadetsereka sei. Saka asi vanhu kugara vachipinda munyika havangareki, vanoramba vachiuya.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru muzvare Zimbudzana. We also want to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Qabuto Mabena, Chairman, Zimbabweans living in South Africa, and Miss Diana Zimbudzana of the Zimbabwe Exiles Forum. We also want to thank our callers, our viewers, our listeners, and those who sent us text messages, and our team behind the scenes, our producers and engineers. Signing off, this is yours truly, Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Gibbs to be saying good night, Zimbabweans.